Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have received 2 juror questions from you. The first juror question, submitted late yesterday afternoon, states that we are not unanimous. Votes have been steady since last Thursday. Jurors have indicated minds are made up. Some have indicated we either let you know today or they want off this jury. In my assessment, we are hung, and additional time will not change this. Submitted by the foreperson. This morning I received an additional juror question indicating the status is unchanged as of this morning. Is there anything from the foreperson to add at this time? All right, at this time, the court is declaring a mistrial. Are we ready to proceed to sentencing?
Oh, Your Honor, Ms. Arias is requesting approximately 30 days. My understanding from our previous conversations is April 10th was available to the court. I just don't think we had a time indicated from the court.
And April 10 will not work for the state. The next of kin have requested that the sentencing be set either on a Monday or a Tuesday.
All right. I will certainly accommodate that request. April 13th or April 14th? Mr. Martinez, do either of those work?
Either one will work for us. Let's go with April 13th.
Mr. Nermi, April 13th?
Your Honor.
April 13th, 8:30 a.m. for sentencing.
What time, Your Honor?
8:30. It's ordered that a pre-sentence report be prepared. And I'm going to order the defendant held pursuant to Rule 7.2. I believe she's already been held.
Your Honor, it's my understanding that Ms. Arias is either waiving her right to a pre-sentence interview and or requesting that counsel be present when said interview is taken. I'd like the minute entry to reflect that.
Well, which is it? Does she want a pre-sentence report or does she not?
My understanding is she's decided not to participate in said interview.
Ms. Arias, you have a right to have a pre-sentence report prepared. Your attorney is indicating you wish to waive that right. Is that correct?
Yes.
We will so reflect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the parties, myself and my staff, I wish to thank you for your extraordinary service on this case. The admonition is lifted. You are free to talk about the case or not talk about it as you wish. I will be back shortly to personally thank you for your service. Thank you. You are excused.
And good evening, everybody, and thank you for choosing King Jordan Radio for Thursday, March the 5th, T15. Tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about the Jodi Arias trial, the LAPD situation, the sniper trial, and much, much more. We have a all-star team here of legal analysts and current lawyers, if you will. Let's introduce them one by one. I think we have, out of Phoenix, Arizona, ladies and gentlemen, defense attorney seen on HLN, Mr. Dwane Cates. Good evening, Dwane, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
Good evening, Jordan. Glad to be here. Doing great.
Awesome. Next, we have an icon in the field of media. She spent time in this trial for the last 2 years. She's been covering it. She was in the courtroom today. She was giving questions to the jurors, and we'll talk to her right now. Let's bring in Beth Karas. Good evening, Beth. How are you?
Good evening.
I'm fine. I'm all packed and ready to go home. But it's been a long saga. 2013 and 2014 into 2015. Who would have thought it would have taken so long?
Absolutely. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, out of Seattle, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Anne Bremner. Good evening, Anne, and welcome to King Jordan Radio. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay. Let's go over to Beth, who was in the courtroom today. Beth, what is your assumption of the verdict, and what went down today?
Well, first of all, when they told us that a verdict was going to be announced at 9:30, and we're in the Mountain Time Zone here, 9:30, I thought, okay, well, they must have reached a unanimous decision after having said that they were at an impasse a few days ago. Of course, we learned later at the press conference they were 11-1 in favor of death for a week since last Thursday, and there was no deliberation on Friday. And I had received a text message while I was getting ready to get down to court early because the lawyers had arrived early. I usually get there about 9:15. Court would begin at 9:30. Well, it turns out, because I saw Jodi Arias' mother in the hall, I said, "What's going on, Sandy?" And she doesn't talk to a lot of people, but she does occasionally, say a few words to me. She said, "I don't know, we were told to be here at 8:30. So, I scrambled to get downtown, and the courtroom started filling up, and there was quite a buzz, and then that's when the court tweeted that the verdict would be announced at 9:30, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, we've got a verdict, we've got unanimity. But then I started talking to a few media people around me as the buzz and the tension was growing in the courtroom, and Anne and Dwane know exactly what I'm talking about. I turned around and I said to a few people near me, I said, didn't this happen last time at the penalty phase? We got word it was a verdict, but then it was deadlocked. So the nomenclature, the word choice is verdict, which to me means a unanimous decision. Anyway, that's exactly what happened. I said, we may not have unanimity, and indeed that's what happened. So, I sort of feel sorry for that, the holdout, because she's getting hammered. I hear the police are guarding her house right now, the sheriff's department, and she just followed the judge's instruction. I don't believe it's true that she wasn't deliberating, and I or somebody asked the jurors today, somebody else did, not me, whether or not they bore any, ill will toward her, and the foreman said he respects her for holding on to her beliefs, and another one said no hatred, no ill will. But the rest of the world seems to have ill will toward her.
Yes, indeed. And Dwane, what do you make out of this situation?
Yeah, I was in the courtroom with Beth this morning when all this took place, and so, the pitchforks and the torches are after this one juror. I mean, they want her thrown in jail. They want a redo. They want to throw her off and put another juror on. And it's just ridiculous what they're calling for, because number one, it's a mistrial, and a hung jury is a mistrial. Right. And in Arizona, the state can't appeal a mistrial, so it's done. I mean, there are no do-overs, even if they find gross misconduct, which I don't think they will. But can you imagine sitting in a jury room since last Thursday, 6-8 hours a day, being the only holdout, and sticking to your guns? I mean, that takes courage. Whether you agree with her or you don't agree with her, you got to admire her for sticking to her guns.
No question about it. And what's your thoughts?
Well, first, it's my pleasure to be on with you and Dwane and Beth. And Beth is a legend. Beth and I go way back, and so it's a real pleasure for me. I think that I agree with Beth that I was like, verdict. They announced a verdict. A verdict is a verdict. It is not a hung jury. It's not a mistried part of a case. It's not a mistried, capital phase. So, everyone's expecting a verdict, and then it's not. And this happened before, as Beth correctly points out. And I guess the second part is, you know, has anyone ever seen 12 Angry Men, that movie? I mean, you can have holdout jurors that, you know, have their, speak their convictions, and we've all seen it, Dwayne, Beth, and I, all of us in our careers. You may have one. And they hold out for their convictions. It doesn't mean they need to be, you know, tarred and feathered because they didn't agree with the majority. And frankly, I think a lot of us predicted that this phase would not result in a verdict of death, that indeed that was relatively futile to go forward again with this particular case, this particular defendant, and expect, you know, death. But that's just my own opinion. I think some other people share it. But it's and I listened to the interviews and Beth's great questions, as always, of these jurors, and they seem to not hold ill will toward the holdout juror.
Yeah, you got to remember the first hung jury was 8-4. I mean, I don't think anybody was surprised that this was a hung jury, and I think everybody was half expecting it.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. And Beth, what about the fact that this idea that you watched allegedly the movie on Lifetime? Is there any bearing to that? Is there any relevance to that?
That you watched the movie? Is that what you're? Well, first of all, I recall, because I've been in Phoenix this whole time. I live in New York, but I came out to Phoenix for this. And I recall Lifetime running that movie while I was out here, because I never saw it. And I remember, I looked at it, I thought, oh my God, this is such a departure from reality. So I don't know if she had watched it at the time of jury selection. She shouldn't have watched it while she was sitting as a juror. But I have to go back to my notes, which are actually in New York, from jury selection, to see if she mentioned it at that time. I have a hard time with what we know about her, because I have quite a few notes on her that I posted on my website today. I have a hard time understanding why Juan Martinez kept her, quite frankly. She had abuse in her background. She called her ex-husband a bully. He was emotionally, psychologically abusive to her. She had, he had been imprisoned. Her current husband had done some time, but, had been long out by the time she married him. And he's, gainfully employed now and all. But she's got some, ties to, the criminal justice system from a defendant side. And if her Facebook page had the likes on it that it has today, and I'm sure it did at that time, her likes include the law of attraction, The Secret, that's totally Jodi Arias stuff, people against Sheriff Arpaio, anti-law enforcement. I mean, there were signs at that time, so I'm really shocked Martinez kept her. And I have to review my notes to see if he had run out of his challenges, but I don't think so.
What about you, Dwayne? Any relevance that you watched that movie, if she did, and any importance
from what I recall, I recall hearing that several of the juries during voir dire admitted that they had seen the movie, and what a judge would typically do is say, well, could you still be fair and impartial? And I think she was one of them. I think she was questioned about that. She had mentioned that she'd at least seen parts of the movie or something ahead of time, and and again, all the people with the pitchforks, and the torches. I mean, we have a system for selecting jurors where Juan Martinez could have stricken her. And and I agree with Beth. If I was the prosecution, I would have gotten rid of her and kept somebody else.
And so say you on this situation about the movie.
Yeah, exactly. With that kind of, those are like a lot of danger signs with this particular juror. And we all know that in picking juries these days that we can find out all kinds of information about jurors, as we're selecting or the panel. And all of those things would have just been red flags that would cause me, at least, if I were the prosecutor, to strike her, especially the abuse. I mean, given the central role of that allegation in the Jodi Arias case. And the fact that she's anti-law enforcement, et cetera, she would have been one of my first strikes, I would think. Now, I wasn't at jury selection, so I don't know if I know it sounds like he wasn't out of strikes at that time, and maybe he had someone, worse that he had to strike. I don't know, but she would be in my worst category if I were the prosecutor in this case, if I were Juan Martinez.
Well, she was toward the end, and she was toward the end. They had 19 jurors, right? They started with 7 extra, and she was in seat number 17. So she was toward the end, and maybe he had run out of strikes. But I I don't remember. I don't know. I have to go back to my notes again. I shipped them all back to New York already.
Yeah, well, exactly. But, don't you think also, Beth, that sometimes that's the kind of juror that you want to elicit more information out of, maybe of an individual voir dire, and to see if you can get them off for cause? I mean, because if she had that much in her background, she might have pretty strong feelings that might result in her getting kicked off for cause as opposed to a peremptory challenge.
Right, that's true.
Beth,
yes, go ahead.
What was your take on the family? The world heard them sobbing. Did you get a chance to see who exactly was crying, and if so, who was
normally,
it? And
right, yes. I sit behind the family, and the first two rows of 5 rows. The first two on each side are for family, lawyers, supporters, people associated with either side. So the side the media is on was the prosecution side. The side the jury was on, and it was Hillary. Travis's sister Hillary was bent over sobbing. Sister Samantha was sobbing. I couldn't see Tanisha. Normally I'm 2 rows behind. I was 3 rows behind today. I couldn't see Tanisha. I mean, she was upright, but she was probably crying. But I know Samantha and Hillary was really sobbing. Hillary had run out of the courtroom during summation also because at the end of his summation, Juan Martinez threw up a photo of Travis's slit throat and referred to it as, and he was juxtaposing a smiling, Jodi and Travis, and then the smile she left on him, which was, this horrible, horrendous gash across his throat. He's almost decapitated. And Hillary, it was thrown up, and the monitor was, right there in front of her, and they're all over the courtroom, and she'd never seen it. And it caught her by surprise, a little bit callous of Martinez, not to, warn the family who'd be throwing these pictures up, and he did it several times. But when she saw that, it was awful for her. She, ran out. Her hand was over her mouth because she was stifling a sob, and then from inside the courtroom you could hear her sobbing outside. So that was during summation. She was very, very emotional, and today she just kept sobbing with the deadlock. But I just keep telling people the critical verdict was a guilty verdict. I mean, if she had committed this crime in 18 other states or so, I mean, she wouldn't have faced death. And a friend of mine in California told me she probably wouldn't have faced death in L.A. either.
And I think Martinez threw that picture up at the end on purpose, specifically to get that reaction. And I think that's a little, I think that's a little cold. I mean, I think he wanted to shock the family. I think he wanted them to sob and run out of the courtroom, and because he did that before in the trial too. He shocked them a couple times by just, with no warning, no nothing, just popping a gruesome picture of their loved one up on the screen, and he does it for effect.
Right.
Did you get a chance, Dwayne, Did you get a chance to see Dwayne, Mr. Martinez's reaction when the verdict came in, Beth and Dwayne? Beth, you start.
I did. He sat stoically. He didn't really react.
Yeah, his back was to us, and I think he knew, right? I mean, I don't know if he knew he probably did know what the note said, because the judge had the lawyers in at 8:30 this morning in order to look at the note, so he knew.
And the family was sobbing before the mistrial was declared. They were sobbing when the jurors first came into the courtroom. They started to sob before Sherry Stevens started to talk.
So they knew.
They knew. They knew what was coming.
Okay, because there was reports that they huddled up, sort of like a huddle position before the verdict was read. So it seems like they definitely knew. But Beth, what happens next to Jodi? What's next? In April sentencing?
Yeah, April 13th, 8:30 is the time that the judge sets every case on her calendar. So I don't know that at 8:30 Jodi Arias will be sentenced, but her case is on the calendar that day, April 13th. So defense asked for that time. They could have waived the pre-sentence report, and she could have been sentenced immediately today, but they wanted it. But Jodi Arias waived her participation, so she's not going to be interviewed before this report gets prepared by the judge. I mean, Anne and Dwayne deal with those reports all the time. I haven't dealt with them forever. I haven't practiced, as a prosecutor for a long time, but together as a guide for the judge, and there's not that much choice for the judge. It's kind of the choice of life sentences is rather academic since you don't have a procedure in place for release, right, Dwane? I mean, it's really going to be a natural life sentence.
I mean, there is no. In reality, there will be no parole. Well, I shouldn't say that because who knows in 25 years what's going to be going on in Arizona. But as it stands right now, nobody gets parole. There is no parole. So even people that are eligible for parole, don't come up. The only way you get anything in Arizona is clemency, and that isn't granted very often either.
I think for Jodi Arias,
and
she's not. I'm sorry, Jordan. I just wanted to say Jodi Arias is not homegrown Arizonan. She's not from here. So, her family's going to have to travel a long way to visit her. So she's probably not going to have a lot of company. Although there are a couple community members here who have been rallying around her mother, Sandy Arias. I think Sandy may have stayed with some of them, and they do live here. So I suppose they'll visit her, some older women.
And a big difference of where she would have been if she was sentenced to death as opposed to life, right?
Well, absolutely, and the other thing that we have to factor in here is just women. I mean, the female factor on how often women are sentenced to death. I mean, it's just not that often. How often do women commit murder? It's not all that often. We're like the gentler gender, but yeah, I mean, it's a huge difference in terms of where it should be. I don't know, and Dwane and Beth, I'm sure, can answer this, of what the lag time is in Arizona between a conviction and a death sentence and the actual execution. I know in California it's about 25 years. I mean, Scott Peterson,
yeah, same
Beth
here.
and I covered that case together. That's a long time. So I don't know, is it a distinction without a difference? I mean, she's pretty young. So, she still probably would face a pretty long time prior to execution in Arizona in any event. But yeah. I'm sure she's relieved, I'm sure she's relieved.
And actually, when she first gets sent to prison, even with the life sentence, she's going to be in the same wing with the death row inmates. I mean, she's technically on death row. She'll probably have a little more privileges than the death row inmates, but they're going to be her neighbors.
I actually looked into this a little bit. Okay, they've been holding a cell for her in the prison, which is in Maricopa County. It's called Perryville. They've been holding a cell for her, and regardless of the sentence she gets, she's going into that cell. It's 6 feet by 8 feet. Yeah, it's the same cell because there are only 2 other women on death row. They're kind of together, but she'd be in the cell 23 hours a day. And I actually put a couple of photos on my website, and I tweeted a photo of the cell yesterday because one of the local anchors here, Troy Hayden from Fox 10, got exclusive video of the cell and the little exercise yard. Well, she'd be out 1 hour a day or maybe 5 hours a week or something by herself in that little pen. With a life sentence, she's still going to be in that cell, but for 2 years. But within 30 days or so, for good behavior, she can start participating in group activities, which will include getting a job for 10 or 15 cents an hour, group therapy. I don't know if there are classes. She can do origami. She can do some of the some art stuff. I mean, all of that will eventually roll out for her, and within 30 days. But she'll be in that cell by herself for 2 years. She's not going to have a cellmate for 2 years. But her mom said to me that Jodi likes to be alone. So that's not a big deal for Jodi, but it'll be nice. She is a social person. And by the way, I was at Perryville last weekend because I happen to know an inmate there. And so, I mean, just a lawyer who got jammed up on a white collar thing. But I said, oh, while I'm here, I got to go say hi. So, and I thought, I'd like to see this prison where Jodi's going. So I went out and I spent 3 hours there last Saturday. And this woman I know is not in the same area, not the maximum. She's a mean spirit. But I asked about Jodi. I said, what's the talk around here? Because people are saying, they're getting ready for Jodi. The women are going to be after her. And this woman said to me, Jodi's actually really liked. She's been in jail for so long that so many women in Perryville have passed through the Phoenix jail where Jodi is and befriended her. And so, according to the woman I know, Jodi's not going to have a problem. Now, she's in a different area, so I don't know. She's in a different unit with different yards, and so, you know, she's not where Jodi's going, but yeah, maybe she will be liked, and it doesn't have to look over her shoulder.
You know, I think that's such a great point, Beth. I went down to I have a case down at the women's prison at Chino in California, and Leslie Van Houten, one of the Manson girls, is in there, and so is Patricia Krenwinkel. People really like them. At least they really like Leslie Van Houten. She was in there talking with Susan Atkins' sister, of all people, but I've been there quite a few times, and on the case that I have, and it's just amazing because I think these are the Manson girls. You know what I mean? Like I think everyone would be afraid of them, but they're very social, you know, very accepted. They're out in the general area visiting, and it's kind of amazing to see.
Interesting.
And Dwane, you wrote up a blog today. Why don't you discuss that with the audience?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just put it on Facebook. There were so many people saying so many crazy things, like, you know, the judge should have replaced this juror. Well, you know, just because you have a juror that doesn't agree with everybody doesn't mean you can replace them. I mean, I wish I could when it's 11-1 for an acquittal. I'd surely like to be able to throw the one that's trying to convict my client off, but that's not the way it works. You don't get to throw people off just because they're not voting the way you want them to. And they were talking about arresting this juror. They were talking about that the state needs to immediately appeal this and go back and get the death penalty. And so I just tried to explain to people that that it's over. I mean, the death penalty phase of this is over. Because this was a mistrial.
They did that in the Amanda Knox case. They did, of course. The prosecutor appealed, but that's a different country.
Yeah, but so I just tried to put some. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, was justice served? Dwane, let's start with you.
Well, it was. They got a conviction. She killed Travis Alexander. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And and the self-defense argument is I mean, I watched the whole trial. It was tenuous at best. And I've had great self-defense cases that I've lost. And so this one, probably wasn't a winner to start out with. She got convicted. She's going to spend life in prison. The judge isn't going to give her the possibility of parole. Not with the nature of this killing. It's just not. People are going after Judge Stevens, and I've known her back when she was a lawyer for the Attorney General's office. She was a prosecutor, and she's a good lawyer. She's a good judge. I like being in her courtroom, and and it's just a shame that people are just because they're not happy with the verdict are basically shooting the messenger.
Beth, was justice served?
Well, I think it was. I really would reiterate everything that Dwane is saying. I'm not one who's going to say, I'm not agreeing with everybody on HLN who, in fact, I won't even put on the television today because I can't take the reporting that's going on out there because people are just they don't understand what's going on, and it's just this mob mentality, this lynch mob mentality, and it's very troubling to me. I had thought after the first deadlock that the state should have just taken death off the table. This is an extremely expensive process. The defense has been paid over $3 million by the taxpayers of Maricopa County. The county attorney's office hasn't released how much money they have spent. Everybody is salaried, but how many cases has Juan Martinez handled in the past 5 or 7 years? This has taken up a lot of his time, right? And, then you've got the Mesa Police Department, the Sheriff's Department jailing her. She's been incarcerated since July of 2008. Anyway, an immense expenditure that if they had just not, if the law here was like it is, say, in Georgia, hung jury the first time, benefit goes to the defendant. It's a life sentence. There's no do-over in the penalty phase. So, I don't know. I think they just should have taken death off the table.
Anne Bremner, was justice served, in your opinion?
Yeah, I to a certain extent. I agree with Beth and Dwane in their comments. I do think that should have been taken off the table. In the history of my state, we've never had a do-over on a penalty phase, ever. And we have the death penalty here in Washington State, up here in Seattle. And I think, I believe in juries, and this is what the jury decided. The jury spent a long time listening to this case, and then this penalty phase, and rendered a decision. A holdout juror is not a criminal or somebody that should be, just vilified. I mean, a holdout juror sometimes it's just somebody that feels, great convictions, and they do deliberate. And nobody said that she didn't deliberate, that I've heard. I mean, maybe I can be corrected on that, but if it is the case that she deliberated in good faith with her fellow jurors, and this was the result, then justice was served.
And Beth, you will have wire-to-wire of coverage on your website. Would you please tell my audience your website?
Oh, yes. My website, which I launched to cover the Arias trial, is called KarasOnCrime.com. So it's my last name, KarasOnCrime.com. It's a subscription site because I did relocate for 5 months here, but it's really pretty cheap for all the content I give you, $5.99 a month. And I'm going to be putting up the trial. I have some exclusive documents I'm putting up, but I couldn't do it until after the trial by agreement. One I put up today, which is a 15-page G-chat, which was an exhibit in the case that was never seen by the public in its entirety. And it was an argument between Jodi and Travis on May 26th, and many believe it was that argument that after it, she started to plan the murder of Travis Alexander, which occurred on June 4th. May 26th is the fight, and June 4th is the murder. And so I put that up today, and it's rather revealing and sad. And it seems that there might have been something that she did that was illegal. Jodi had referred to maybe consulting a lawyer, and who knows, maybe Travis was threatening her, although not in that G-chat, threatening to reveal something about her. And she was silencing him. I never believed we knew that, or we do know the true motive for this murder.
Absolutely. Beth, do you want to stay for a few more stories, or do you have to go?
Well, I'm about to put my suitcases in the car. I got to get to the airport. I can stay for like 5 more minutes, but I'm actually heading out the door, heading to the airport.
Let's listen to some sound of the poisoning salt bomb, I believe this is, and we'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about
First, we're to begin with that mother from Westchester County convicted of killing her son.
Now, Lacey Spears was found guilty this afternoon, and it took about 2 days for the jury to reach a verdict. Eyewitness News reporter Joe Torres been following the case live from the courthouse right now in White Plains with all the details. Joe.
David, it is more than 13 months after his death. One law enforcement official here at the courthouse today telling us finally, justice for little Garnett Spears. Remember, this was a lengthy investigation that involved detectives from Westchester County and Rockland County. They traveled to 5 states. They sifted through mounds of health records. The trial itself lasted 2 weeks. The deliberations 2.5 days. And then at 12:30 this afternoon, a note from the jurors to the judge, and it said, "We have a verdict."
Members of the jury, answering through your foreperson, how say you as to count 1, murder in the 2nd degree, not guilty or guilty?
Guilty.
Is this verdict unanimous?
Yes.
Lacey Spears, 27 years old. She barely flinched. It was her father there and her sister, the father's daughter. They sought comfort on each other. In fact, it was Lacey's sister, when the verdict was read, who shouted out, "Oh, my God." Court officers then took the 27-year-old mother back to jail. Her sentencing is scheduled for early next month. At one point today, during the deliberations, the jurors asked for some instructions from the judge as to whether they could consider mental illness as a part of their deliberations. The judge quickly shot that down, saying there was no evidence presented at trial that showed Lacey Spears suffered from any sort of mental illness. The panel obviously looking for some sort of explanation as to how a mother could possibly poison her 5-year-old son with lethal doses of sodium. In fact, prosecutors say it was really an effort to gain sympathy and attention. Defense counsel, we talked to them afterwards, they told us not once did they even consider mental illness as a part of their defense.
Anne Bremner, I want to go to you first. What do you make of this Salt Mom's story and verdict?
Well, I was a little bit surprised. We've covered it before. I think I talked about it on Nancy Grace. But, I do think the jurors, when a mother kills her child, they want to think that it's mental illness that was the cause. And, women are diagnosed in cases like this. Men are demonized. So, it's just a very sad case and a bizarre one at that. But I am surprised under the facts as I know them.
That's your take.
Well, I have to confess that I don't know enough right now because I have been living the Jodi Arias bubble. And when you asked me to stay on, I thought I was going to keep talking Arias. So I think I better go because I don't really know. But I don't know enough to give you a thoughtful response or even to
You've been busy, Beth.
Talk my way out of it. So, but I think I should. I've been getting calls right now from others who say I gotta move to the airport. So I think I should go.
Okay,
Jordan.
Thank you for joining us.
All right,
I appreciate it.
Hey, it was good seeing you down here in Arizona.
Say your website.
It's been great talking to you, Beth.
Say your website one more time.
Oh, website is KarasOnCrime.com, KarasOnCrime.com. And Anne and Dwayne, it was great talking to you. Jordan, great talking to you.
Great to talk to you.
Yes, we finally did it. We finally got together, all four of us.
Thanks, Beth. You're the best.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Beth. Okay,
Jordan,
Dwayne, I'll get to you on that. Yeah. As far as that mom, and we see a lot of this in the last 10 years or so, have you been following the case, A, and if so, what's your thoughts on the conviction of Salt Mom?
I've been following it, not intently, but I have been following the case. And what really struck me about the clip that you played is what they described is Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is a mental illness. And then they say there was no mental illness at all in the trial. So the prosecutor's theory was Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So I don't know if the defense considered that or not, but I certainly would have.
Me too.
You too, yeah. Just mental illness was not on the table, they said, and so that is a form of mental illness, you believe, Dwayne?
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, it's a diagnosis that you can get.
And it fits the facts, doesn't it, Dwayne? I mean, when you look at it, if she's in fact guilty, which the jury said she is, it sounds like a Munchausen's case.
It is. It's where the mom is making her kid sick so that she can get attention and people will feel sorry for her. That's Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and it happens more than people would like to think it does.
And what do you make of all these mothers in the last decade, as I said before, killing their children? I mean, we had Andrea Yates, the most notorious one, Susan Smith. What's your take on all these moms killing their kids, Dwayne?
Well, I think that, I was a communications major, my undergraduate, and it's what's called a heuristic. Just because we're hearing about it more doesn't mean that it's happening more. I think it's probably happening about the same as it always has happened. It's just that, we live in a 24-hour news cycle now where, it's the kind of thing that, it used to be if somebody killed their kid in Chicago, you wouldn't hear about it in L.A. But now, everything's national news. So I don't know that it's happening more. I think it's just, I think it is, it's just, the news cycle, you got to feed the beast, man. You got to keep feeding the beast.
Anne, your thoughts?
Well, I could see that also, and we also had Diane Downs, and we also had Casey Anthony. And I do think that oftentimes in these cases, that you do have women that are diagnosed. Women that, Andrea Yates pled insanity, remember? I think Susan Smith did. Diane Downs didn't, but she completely denied the crime. And then Casey Anthony, of course, pled not guilty and is acquitted, but it's clear she had some real issues. I mean, real issues. And so, I still don't think that mothers kill their kids unless they've got some kind of a mental issue. I agree with the jurors that have kind of meted out verdicts that reflect that view. It's just against nature. I mean, that a mother would kill her own child. And I think that's why those cases fascinate us. I mean, is that you don't, there are other cases out there that are not as notorious, but the Andrea Yates case especially, I mean, killing child after child in the bathtub, and her husband supported her, and then she goes in and pleads insanity. I mean, that's amazing, when you look at something like that she could have done what she did. And I think it's so hard for us to imagine as a society that mothers can kill their kids unless there's something, mentally deficient or they have mental illness, that would qualify as a defense.
Well, and I think that basically, that qualifies as a defense. I mean, I think everybody that kills somebody has some sort of mental illness going. The normal, sane people don't kill people, generally speaking. Unless you add drugs and alcohol. Yeah, that's true. Well, I think you add drugs and alcohol, and you can get there.
Yeah, he had meth and alcohol, I think.
Yeah. Yep, that'll do it.
Another big trial that ended last week was the American Sniper trial. Let's hear this sound, and we'll talk on the other side.
You are going to hear directly from the jurors in the American Sniper trial, a story that has played out both in court and at your local multiplex. So how did the 10 women and 2 men on the jury reach their guilty verdict? Here's ABC's Ryan Owens with an ABC News exclusive.
We, the jury, find the defendant Eddie Ray Ralph guilty of the felony offense of capital murder as charged.
With that, the Marine-turned-murderer will spend the rest of his life in a Texas prison for killing American sniper Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield. Kyle's widow, Taya, who was the first tearful witness in this case, posted this on Facebook today. God bless the jury. 7 of the 12 jurors who decided Eddie Ralph's fate sat down with ABC News for an exclusive look inside their deliberations.
No one wants to go to bed thinking, oh my gosh, I just put somebody away for life. The only thing that gave me peace is that there was so much evidence.
They say Texas justice is swift, but this one was quick even by Lone Star standards. The jury of 10 women and 2 men took only about 2 hours to reject Ralph's insanity defense. The deliberations were pretty short. Was this an easy decision?
It was an easy decision based on the fact that we all kind of were on the same page going into the deliberations. There was so much information coming in that each of us grasped onto different little pieces of it, and when we put it all together, it was like the puzzle just came together.
Life in prison wasn't punishment enough for some jurors. The state did not go for the death penalty against Eddie Ralph. If they had, show me your hands, how many of you think you would have voted for death in this case? 3 hands for death. These jurors say not one of them bought Ralph's defense.
In the very end, this young man knew right from wrong. Yeah. And so with a good conscience, we had to say he was guilty of this crime because he knew right from wrong.
I got a woman and a kid 200 yards out moving towards the convoy.
This courtroom drama, which lasted 9 days, is the sequel to the Hollywood blockbuster American Sniper. Chris Kyle, the deadliest sniper in U.S. military history, played by Bradley Cooper. Did it add pressure to you to know that, you're writing the real-life ending to this huge blockbuster?
Honestly, I never really thought about the movie throughout this. We were there to hand down the judgment, and that's what we did.
The case was never a whodunit. Ralph admits he killed both men at this Texas gun range 2 years ago. The only question for jurors, was the former Marine so mentally ill he didn't know right from wrong when he shot them both multiple times in the back? The prosecution began their case with Chris Kyle's widow, Taya.
I need you to be human again.
Played on the big screen by Sienna Miller.
Who were you married to prior to February the 2nd, 2013?
Chris Kyle.
Clutching her husband's dog tags, she walked jurors through family pictures.
I was outside our house on Easter morning, Chris, hiding Easter eggs for the kids.
Detailing the last time she saw her husband alive.
Said we loved each other and gave each other a kiss and a hug like we always did.
And the moment she realized something was terribly wrong.
Then I texted, "Are you okay? I'm getting worried."
Did he text back?
No. You know, it's kind of hard not to put some of it together that I haven't heard from him and I'm worried and I haven't heard from him and then a police officer shows up.
It was mentally and emotionally exhausting from day one to yesterday. It was really tough, and there were several of us that did not hold it together. There was lots of tears shed.
And a lot of evidence to sift through, like this interrogation tape where Ralph repeatedly tells the Texas Ranger he knew right from wrong. The jurors say the way he answered this question invalidated his insanity defense from the start.
You know, what you did today is wrong, right? You understand that? Yes,
He even apologized to the two families.
I'm so sorry for what I've done, and if I could have done it differently, I'd have done it so much differently.
Ralph's defense team hoped these videos would show he was psychotic, suffering from severe schizophrenia.
Ralph was insane and not guilty by reason of insanity.
Insanity defenses almost never succeed. So in that context, this was a real argument of a defendant who had severe mental illness and yet still was faced with an incredibly difficult legal challenge, which was to demonstrate that he simply didn't understand that what he was doing was wrong.
If he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not really capable of answering that question. That's just like asking if the sky's purple.
One of the experts we had him examined by diagnosed him with schizophrenia. There were other experts also that thought he was legally insane, and so, no, I wouldn't second guess, or I don't think it was a gamble.
Did you think Eddie Ralph was crazy?
I don't think he's insane at all. I think he played the system.
Ralph now joins a list of notorious killers who gambled on an insanity plea. John Wayne Gacy, David Berkowitz, Ted Bundy, Theodore Kaczynski, and Jeffrey Dahmer. Each failed or ultimately pleaded guilty.
Well, we will file a notice of appeal this week for him, and we think that his statement was involuntary based on his state of mind. And that will be one specific thing that will be attacked on appeal.
Tonight, the jurors who rejected Ralph's defense say they will rest easy after a decision that was anything but.
You look out, and no matter what was being delivered, there's a family on one side of the courtroom suffering, there's a family on the other side of the courtroom suffering, and knowing at the end of the day, your decision is not going to fix any of this for all of them.
That may be true, but perhaps it's some consolation for Taya Kyle, the widow who posted that God Bless the Jury on Facebook with a link to this Pete Scobell Band recording. Saying, "This song is Chris, it is me. It is all the people who carry Chris in the hearts he left behind." I'm Ryan Owens for Nightline in Stephenville, Texas.
So what do you think of the verdict? Should the jury have taken the insanity defense to heart? You can weigh in on our Facebook page.
All right, I want to go to Dwane first. Dwane, they tried the mentally illness defense. It did not work. What were your thoughts of this trial?
Well, that was a really, really tough trial for the defense. I mean, they had bad fact after bad fact after bad fact, to go into. I mean, clearly the defendant had mental illness, but from they had the worst, insanity defense case I've ever seen, in that they specifically asked him if he knew what he did was wrong, and he said yes. And plus, I mean, he had done so many things to acknowledge that he understood what he was doing and that it was wrong and that he was sorry for it later. And, it's just, they're hard enough to win when you don't have bad facts, but when you got bad facts like that, and plus you have a very famous victim and the world watching, yes. I mean, that was a tough case.
And what's your thoughts on this case?
Well, I agree. And when I was a prosecutor, and we had an example, for example, in a robbery case, we would say, he held up a bank with a gun. He didn't hold up a telephone pole with a banana. You know what I mean? It's like, it's got to be extraordinary to prevail in an insanity defense. And not knowing right from wrong, I mean, he said it was wrong. And not knowing the nature and quality of your act under that's the McNaughton test, it's nearly impossible to prevail in an insanity defense in this country unless you're in Colorado, near James Holmes, where the burden of proving that he is, sane is on the state. But that's unusual. That's the old federal rule that we had with Hinckley they've gotten rid of. So generally speaking, the defense is rare, and verdicts, finding insanity are very rare. And I don't see on these facts that this should have been within that very small percentage of cases where a jury should have found that he was not guilty by reason of insanity.
And Dwane, if this was your client, would you have done anything different? And if so, what?
Well, probably not, because again, they did everything they could with, they did the best they could with what they had to work with. They just didn't have a lot to work with. The insanity defense sometimes is a double-edged sword. I've got a case, it's not a homicide case, but I've got one going now, where my client is spending like 5 times longer in jail than he should because because they can't find him competent. So he can't take a plea. If he could take a plea, he'd get probation and he'd get out of jail. But he's not competent to take a plea, so they keep him locked up. And so, sometimes the insanity defense is a double-edged sword. It can work against you sometimes.
And what about you? If you were his defense attorney, would you have done anything different?
Well, I might have tried,
so
to use his mental state, in plea negotiations. I'm sure they did. Given that he's a schizophrenic. But just because you're schizophrenic doesn't mean you're legally, insane. But to try and work things that way. But other than that, but I don't know that I would have put on a full-scale insanity defense on these facts. Because, clearly it was futile. And, I don't know what else they could have done trying the case. I guess what I'm saying is they could have tried something short of trying the case and using his mental status as some kind of a way to get a reduction of sentence. But this is a very notorious case, very famous victim, one of the victims, and that makes it very tough for the defense all the way around.
No question. Okay, this last story is about the LAPD. Let's hear some sound, and we'll come back.
Skid Row
and we'll
covers
talk
less
on
than
the
a square mile of Los Angeles, and yet it offers up one of the largest concentrations of homeless people in the United States. When police arrived here on Sunday, May 1st, it was in response to a robbery call focused on a man known as Africa, living here in a tent. Security video taken from in front of the Union Rescue Mission shows police talking with him for several minutes before he led back into his tent. That's when the struggle began. A taser was used, he continued to struggle, and then gunshots rang out. Africa died. Officials claim he was grabbing for an officer's gun. Today, protesters marched through the Los Angeles Police Department headquarters in response to this, yet another officer-involved shooting. Walking these streets, it's not difficult to see that violence simmers here, and it's impossible to ignore the presence of mental illness and street drugs. I spoke with the CEO of Union Rescue Mission, who knows these residents well. He spent 10 years working here on the homeless problem.
We're asking the LAPD to maintain peace in an impossible environment out here. And so it's almost as if we as a society have dropped everybody who's struggling with homelessness and mental illness and deep troubles, and we've dropped them in a small area, and then we've handed them off to the police and said, you guys do our job. And this isn't going to be solved until we all do our part.
Mayor Eric Garcetti announced plans to purchase 7,000 body cameras for the LAPD, making it one of the largest recorded police forces in the country. Body cameras worn by officers in this shooting were part of a pilot program for that. That video won't be released unless required by a court proceeding. In a press conference yesterday, LAPD Police Chief Charlie Beck pointed to photographs of one of the officers' guns, which showed evidence of a struggle. The officers involved in the shooting remain on administrative leave. On Skid Row in Los Angeles, Lindsay France, RT.
Okay, Anne Bremner, I want to go to you first. What is your thoughts of this situation with the LAPD killing the homeless man?
Well, it doesn't look good, but, I represented the Seattle Police Department and officers for decades, and King County Sheriffs and other departments, Bellevue Police, etc. And I've also responded to officer-involved shootings to help the officer, to assist and advise the officer at the time of the shooting on a deadly use of force many, many, many times. And I just can say this, if there is evidence that somebody went for the officer's gun, then you can see use of deadly force. The Supreme Court has said under Graham versus Connor that you don't judge the use of police force, deadly force, by 20/20 hindsight. You have to look at whether it's objectively reasonable. And then, of course, that the use of deadly force by an officer can be used to overcome, deadly force against the officer, to defend themselves, to defend others, or to apprehend a fleeing felon who poses an imminent danger of serious bodily or death to the officer or others if not apprehended. So those are all kind of framework questions in police cases. And there's so many of these cases now, that have become so much lightning rod cases across the country. But I also have to say, as a lawyer that's defended police officers and departments for many years, that those are the kinds of things we need to use in our analysis of whether or not the use was justified.
Dwane, what's your thoughts?
Well, the police officers, they've got a really tough job out there, and sometimes it's a fine line between whether it's justified or it's not justified. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I'm a self-defense person. I've fired guns my entire life. And it's one of those things. It's a split-second decision, and they don't get it right 100% of the time, But I don't think that it was anything malicious where they were, hey, let's go see if we can kill some homeless guys today. It's one of those deals. He gets in a scuffle that and when adrenaline hits your system, it does strange things to your brain. It really does. And just shooting at the gun range sometimes, you can get, you unload your gun sometimes when you're just planning on shooting a couple times. So there's such a fine line about whether it's okay or not. But the officers are trained that at the end of the day that they want to go home to their families at night, and sometimes they err on the side of shooting too quickly. Sometimes they don't. But it's just so hard to call.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to bring up, they're talking about in the chat. Anne, did you hear about Scott, the other Peterson, tried to have the prosecutor killed? And let's,
yes.
What's your thoughts?
Well,
yes. What's his name?
Oh.
That's Peterson.
Are you talking to me?
What's his first? Yes. What's his first name?
It'll come to me.
Peterson is his list. Drew Peterson. That's it.
Drew, exactly, right. Well,
yes.
he was a police officer, which is really neither here nor there,
right.
other than that he was, suspected of killing, or causing his wife's disappearance, of killing his wife. Her name was Savio, in the bathtub. Remember, they exhumed her body and came back, and and actually had a murder trial. He's always been very arrogant. He would talk to the press. He would taunt the press about the disappearance of his current wife. I think he had 3 wives altogether. So does it surprise me? No. I mean, I think that he's somebody that abused, his authority in so many ways, or at least his talents or skills, that he attained in law enforcement. And I think that when I read that and I read about the current charge, I wasn't surprised at all. He would say all kinds of things during the course of proceedings against him that were just like taunting and arrogant and like catch me if you can kind of thing. So that kind of seems to be the logical conclusion in a case involving this person.
And Dwane, your thoughts on Peterson?
Well,
Peterson.
Well, he's locked up for life. So what are they going to do? Lock him up for 2 lives? If he's successful. I mean, that's the problem with people that have nothing to lose. People that have nothing to lose are the most dangerous because, what are they going to do to him? I mean, they put him in lockdown, double secret probation. There's just not much they can do. And, it's a good thing he wasn't successful. But, it's a reality in our world.
But he isn't a life without parole, is he? I mean, the fact is that laws can change down the road, like we talked about, and he can get some, change in the sentence, and then you've got something else to stack on it. you can't let it just sit up there. You know, I mean, you're threatens to kill somebody. You know, especially a prosecutor or a cop. You know, so that's kind of why I think. You look at somebody like him, you just can't say, "Oh well, you know, let's let that go." You know, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. You can't let it go. I'm not saying let it go. I'm just saying, you know, that's, you know, his thinking. He doesn't strike me as a forward thinking guy. You know, that he's thinking about his future.
Understatement.
And he's thinking, he's thinking about, okay, he's thinking about, you know, what do I want right now? What's going to make me happy right now? And you know, and he's just doing stupid things.
And Dwane, Judge Sherry Stevens, no chance that she's gonna give Jodi probation, in your opinion, right?
I would be shocked. She's a former prosecutor herself. Okay. She, you know, no matter how she's been portrayed in the press about being easy on Jodi, you know, let me tell you, you know why she was easy on Jodi with a lot of her rulings? Because this is a death penalty case. Okay, she doesn't want this case overturned. You know, she knew that Jodi was going to get convicted. Okay, and so she bent over backwards at every stage of the proceeding. Okay, to make sure that once she was convicted, she was going to stay convicted, and the general public fried her for that. Had this not been a death penalty case, you know, there would have been a lot, you know, it would have been handled a lot differently by the judge.
A lot of things wouldn't have came in. And you give me your assessment of the defense team. Anne, let me start with you.
The defense team? Well, I don't think they wanted to be there. I think they did an excellent job. Team. Yeah, they did an excellent job.
Right,
in
Jodi's
case,
be there.
Yeah, they did an excellent job. I mean, they spared her from the death penalty, and you know, that's usually a win in a death penalty case for a defense attorney to spare their client from the death penalty.
Yeah, I agree.
Dwane,
when you got your client on the stand, the first words out of her mouth are basically, "Yes, I killed him." Okay, in a death penalty case, if you save them from the death penalty, you won. Okay, they had an untenable task of being under a microscope for 4 months. You know, I mean, it is just. I mean, I did a relatively high-profile trial. It was a 2-month trial, and I had to have IV transfusions afterwards. I couldn't imagine what they went through in this thing.
Give me your take, Dwane, of the prosecutor, Juan Martinez. He has this fan page now that has thousands and thousands of likes on Facebook. He's becoming very popular, and there's memes with popular things about Juan Martinez. He's definitely made himself into a household name. But what is your personal opinion about Mr. Martinez?
You know what? Mr. Martinez is a very, very good attorney. He is. I don't agree with a lot of his strategies. Like, I don't agree with him shocking the victims to get sobbing in front of the jury so that, you know, to get his wins. You know, sometimes I think that he sees every problem as a nail and his only tool in his toolbox is a hammer. You know, and you know he's relatively successful at what he does. But again, if you're a prosecutor, you should win 95% of your cases, because you know the cases that aren't winnable, you shouldn't be taken to trial. So you know he's very proficient at what he does. You know, I think that part of the reason that this thing went so long and we did it again was part of Juan Martinez wanted to get the death penalty. You know, I think that as an attorney, you know, I can generally steer my clients in a direction. You know, he probably could have talked the victim's family out of going for the death penalty the second time if he would explain to them that that for the next 20 years they're going to get calls that she's going to get put to death, and then it's going to get stayed, and then it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and then it's going to come back, and there's going to be another death if he would have explained the process to them, I don't think they would have wanted to go for the death penalty the second time.
And Bremner, what's your take of the prosecutor, Juan Martinez, in your personal opinion?
Well, of course, I'm an ex-prosecutor, and I'm a do defense now, civil and criminal. But I believe the job of the prosecutor is to see that justice is done. And that having been said, I was never rabid. I might have been aggressive or a little bit of a hellcat sometimes as a prosecutor, but in my view, I thought he was too aggressive in his questioning, and just physically so too. And I think that can backfire sometimes. I admire him. I know he's got a huge fan base, and I know he's got zeal, and I know he's got conviction. It's just some of his style at least didn't resonate with me. But again, I'm from Seattle, and we probably have kind of a different culture here with respect to the way we try cases. But overall, I'd give him an A-. Some of the aggressive tactics, including showing pictures to make the family members of the victim react in front of the jury, is not something that I would emulate.
What about Dwane, the way he treated Alice Labette and maybe Dr. Samuels? A little harsh on some of the witnesses, would you say?
He was, and had I been the defense attorney, there would have been screaming matches at the podium. I mean, you got to protect your witnesses a little better, And I saw him pull a tactic off. It was outside the presence of the jury. They called a witness, and the witness took the stand, and Juan asked him one question, and the guy said, "Well, I think." He goes, "What do you mean you think?" I just started screaming at him.
Yeah.
And it's the old theory of, if you smack them right up front right away, they're going to be scared the rest of the time. And he tried to intimidate the witness, and I would have come out of my shoes. I mean, I wouldn't have stood for it. I would have, I probably may have gotten thrown out of the court because I would have been screaming at him, and we would have had serious problems. And you never know how that would turn out in the end. But it's just one of those deals.
And you saw some of his testimony against Alice and Dr. Samuels. Do you think that he went a little too over the line?
Well, yeah. I mean, something we learned as prosecutors, we had Irving Younger, who is a very well-noted, well-thought-of prosecutor, has 10 rules for cross-examination. And one of those was, don't argue with the witness. Another one was, don't become adversarial. Another one is don't raise your voice. Another one is when you think you've got enough from the witness, sit down and shut up. And I think sometimes those rules should have been followed. I mean, you can cross-examine in a normal tone. You can cross-examine in a tone that shows, professionalism, and still do very, very well in cross-examining a witness with eliciting, their bias, facts against them, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a lot too. Like when they're answering the question, sometimes I'll walk away, like I'll walk over to turn my back to them, like I don't care what you're saying, and you can roll your eyes. I mean, you can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things to show the jury that this person's an idiot without screaming at them and calling them an idiot. It's called finesse.
Right.
No question. All right, I think we have a caller, area code 267. Please state your name and what you want to talk about. 267, it's your turn.
Hi. No, I didn't have a question. I was just listening. I was just listening to everything that was being said. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Do you have a comment?
No, see, I just came in part the way. So I was just listening to everything that was being said and taking it all in.
Okay. You have an opinion about Jodi Arias? No, it's okay. But last thing, have you kept up to date with the Aaron Hernandez trial, Anne?
Yeah, I've done some coverage for CNN, and I try to watch it as much as I can.
Okay, and what is the latest on that? Then do you see an acquittal for Mr. Hernandez?
No, I don't. It's a very strong circumstantial case. They've got the surveillance, they've got the timing in the car, they've got shoe prints, they've got tire prints, they've got the prints of Odin Lloyd in the car, the victim. They've got, a casing of a Glock consistent with the murder weapon in the rental car. They've got dirt from where he was found in the car, consistent with that dirt. You can go on and on. I mean, Aaron Hernandez dismantled his own surveillance system. He dismantled his own cell phone and then called his co-defendant Wallace. It's circumstantial evidence, and that sometimes can be stronger than direct evidence. Witnesses can and do lie. They can be mistaken, but evidence doesn't lie. And I think that reportedly, looking confident, smiling, saying I love you to my family, etc., it's a strong case they're building against him, and they're doing it very well so far.
Dwane, have you been following Aaron Hernandez? And if so, what's your feelings on it?
I have, and I agree 100%. I mean, I sit clients down all the time, and I tell them, if we're going into trial and we've got one or two, pieces of circumstantial evidence that we've got to explain away, well, that's possible. But when you start having 10 or 15 or 20 pieces of circumstantial evidence you got to explain away, you're done. I mean, you can only explain. You can only explain so much. You could come up with an excuse why this happened or that happened, but when you got to come up with 15 excuses or 15 different alternative stories, I mean, after a while, nobody believes you. Nobody believes anything that comes out of anybody's mouth once you get that far into the weeds.
And Dwane, I never got your take on the Bill Cosby story. There was another accused, believe it or not, that came out 2 days ago. What is your take on the Bill Cosby situation?
It's really sad because it's good at this late date. It's really difficult to tell who's telling the truth and who's not. So many years later, and you add to the fact that he's a celebrity, and he has lots of money for potential civil suits. Okay, now all of a sudden you've got people that could have a motive to lie. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm not saying they're not lying. I'm saying I don't know, and it's extremely difficult to tell who's telling the truth and to what degree. And did the stories grow over the years, or what happened? And it's really sad that an icon like that is going down. I mean, it sounds like it's one of those deals where there's smoke, there's probably fire. But again, I hate to put somebody, I hate to convict somebody on the fact that there's bunches of allegations, so he must have done it. So it's a really tough deal.
And the strength is, though, the numbers, I would say, there's, I think, close to 30 now. It'd be really hard to shoot down 30 people would conjure up a story.
Yeah, there's so many. The statute of limitations is run, I think, on virtually all the cases. There might be one or two where it hasn't. That's on criminal and civil. And the women have remarkably similar stories. They're from different parts of the country and from different parts of time during his lifetime. And so, to me, it's hard to dispute those kinds of numbers. And it seems to me something he should acknowledge, because, Gloria Allred asked him to waive the statute of limitations and have a fund to help the victims. Of course, it's fallen on deaf ears, as one might expect.
And probably will, but yeah, that's sad though. That like Dwane said, this legacy of his is going to be remembered now just for that. So that's a sad state of affairs.
Well, it's gone, and he probably, I'm sure he did some things that were inappropriate in his lifetime, and again, when there's just so many allegations now, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, and then the wife on the show came to his aid, but you got to think that she was liking those checks that TV Land would throw to her, and so she had a motive to stick up for him. I don't know if you heard her, Dwane.
Oh, I did. I
Alicia
heard her.
Rashad.
She stood up for him, 100%.
Absolutely. And Dwane, were you at the press conference of the jurors? And if so, what was your thoughts of it? Or did you hear it?
Well, I was outside the door of the press con with the jurors because I don't have press credentials, and they wouldn't let a mere lowly lawyer into the room to listen to the interviews with the jurors. But I did hear them, and the thing is they talked in a general way. They didn't say she wouldn't deliberate. They just said after a while she had her mind made up, and she just, once people are starting to attacking you, once you get behind the eight ball, and and people are really trying to get you to change your mind. I mean, some people that just makes them firmer in their conviction, and I'm sure some people were not real happy with the fact that she wasn't going to, that she wouldn't do what they wanted her to do. So, I think it's a little bit of sour grapes on the other jurors' side, but I think she's a hero for what she did. I think she stood up for her convictions.
Yes, she is a hero. She stood to her conviction, and that's what the justice system is about. Would you agree, Anne?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely, and let's do this again. Thanks to Beth Karas for joining us. Anne Bremner, always a pleasure having you on. And Mr. Dwane Cates, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, Jordan.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Glad I could be here this time. Sorry about missing last time.
That's okay. We'll do it again, and maybe during the sentencing trial, the sentencing phase, we'll get you back here, and we'll talk about that and some other stuff.
Well, I'm
always a pleasure having you, Dwane, and on.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay. I am going to play, ladies and gentlemen, some audio of the jurors in just a second. Just remember, on the 17th, well, Aphrodite Jones. On the 18th, we will have Joey Jackson. So stay tuned for that. All right, here are some of the jurors. We'll play a couple of minutes of that, and then we'll log out. Follow us on Facebook at King Jordan Radio, and follow the show on Twitter at Mr. King Jordan. Thanks, everybody, and we'll speak to you on Tuesday night for Wrestling Talk. Here is the jurors.
First of all, we will all try to get through this. This has been a very emotional week for us, an emotional day. Please bear with us if we lose it a little bit. On behalf of 11 jurors and alternates, we would like to make a statement to the family and friends of Travis Alexander. Our deepest sympathy goes out to the family, and they have our heartfelt apologies. We hope that the fact that we were overwhelmingly for the death penalty brings at least a little peace to the family. Although we continued deliberating and put numerous hours into the final vote, we could not change the outcome. We felt that the Travis Alexander portrayed in court was not an accurate portrayal of his life and character. The 11 of us strived for justice for Travis, but to no avail. We absolutely feel the penalty should have been death.
When you all were deadlocked on Tuesday and you let the judge know that, what was the split then?
11-1.
We've been 11-1 since the beginning.
It was last Thursday afternoon. Steady.
With this kind of solidarity, your feelings about the juror who held out?
As an alternate, it was very upsetting.
Say what?
As an alternate, it's very upsetting.
Great. We're only getting one mic, so if we could get something, we'd really like to hear what you have to say.
As an alternate, it was very upsetting that there was a juror that was so that had a position before they entered the room. In my opinion.
Say that do you believe this person had an agenda before?
Yes, we do.
Began?
Yes, we do.
Can you shed any light on why
you think that, and what the reasons were?
Once we started deliberations, there was very minimal deliberation, comments from her, the juror. We all walked in that room knowing we wanted to look at more evidence, open up the journals, read a little bit more of witness testimonies. We felt it was very closed off to this juror, and it just didn't get anywhere.
In essence, that's sort of alleging that this person violated their oath when they took it. Is that your feeling?
No.
We did raise a concern to the judge at one point about a potential bias and ineffective deliberations. So we did try to voice our concerns written, and in fact, we may have been out of line. It was our first experience for most of us, but we went as far as to request consideration of an alternate.
How did you try to change her mind?
We opened up the floor when we first got in the deliberation room. We opened up the floor to everybody. What does everybody want to look at? What do we want to focus on? We pretty much let this juror decide what was more important to start delving into, so we could understand each and other's position. So the juror led the way on, and we started with the journals. That was what this juror wanted to focus on, was the journals.
Can you talk about the feeling last night and this morning when there was just that moment of we aren't getting anywhere?
Devastating.
Knots in the stomach.
Devastating.
Lack of sleep.
Most of us have not slept this week. Our families, not only have we had to, with our families have also suffered along with us, not being able to speak to them, not being able to share why we're where we're at. I mean, this has been an emotional toll on us, our families, our jobs.
And we feel like we failed.
Were
you in the foreperson?
No, I was not.
Okay. And was your vote always 11-1?
The initial, when we first, when we first went back into the jury room that afternoon, there was some time to get evidence, video equipment and everything. But we did do a round table, and it was split
near
roughly.
50%.
It was about 50, a few undecided, but about 50% for death penalty. But then as we continued Wednesday afternoon and by Thursday after lunch, I wanted a data point, so I took tried to take a poll every day so I could see if things are changing, shifting daily. And from Thursday afternoon, it was stable.
Are you angry at this juror for holding fast to her vote?
No, I think we're angry because we felt they didn't deliberate with us. It wasn't part of the conversation to the table. That's what we felt like.
Is anyone angry at the one holdout? Anyone want to say they're angry? That's what I thought. I could see the anger.
Sir, can you do me a favor? Can you put that microphone down?
What did you think of Jodi Arias' testimony? You only saw part of it. Obviously, she didn't finish. And she didn't finish because the judge ordered the courtroom unlocked so we could be there, and Jodi said, no, I'm not going to continue. What did you make of what she did tell you?
Me personally did not put very much stock into what she said at all.
Did she look remorseful?
No, and that was one of the things that we...
looking for that.
Yes, we all looked for that constantly. We did not see that.
Was it difficult for you to avoid the news and all the and social media and people that were... It was?
Yes.
Very difficult.
Anybody in here who was an initial holdout for the death penalty, what was the turning point in the deliberation room where you decided that death was appropriate?
For me, it was Dr. DeMarte, I think.
Did you think there was any big deal about porn on the computer?
No, absolutely not.
No factor at all.
1 second.
No factor.
Now, the juror who's angry, you didn't get the chance to say you had to say about why you're angry about that.
I feel that the one holdout had her mind made up from the beginning, and what angered me was
the biggest thing that angered me was that she alluded that the death penalty would be a form of revenge. And I know that there are lots of us on the jury whose religions, for instance, don't support capital punishment. So the fact that we had to overcome that and came to the decision that lots of us did, the fact that she said it was like we were trying to get revenge was painful.
Did she look at the pictures at all that rolled out? Did you guys show her the pictures and go through those with her?
Yesterday afternoon.
What was her reaction to that? Talk about that. Not budging. How you went through that process. You said you cleared the table and put that out. Talk about that.
I was just saying we did go through that. We laid out all the crime scene photos, all the autopsy photos, discussed them at length, and she definitely had an understanding. You know, everybody had a clear understanding of the premeditation, the brutality, but it became clear that that wasn't enough for everybody.
Someone mentioned that she focused on the journals a lot. Was there anything else that she mentioned that was a specific reason that she voted the way she did? Or?
She thought that her psychological makeup was enough to say that she could not help, that she could not cope. Therefore, it gave her the idea that she didn't deserve the death penalty.
Quite a few of the mitigating factors struck a chord with that juror, and particularly 8 and 9.
You all look emotionally drained. Talk about what this process has just been like on your part.
I just want to make a comment. I was actually released the Monday before final statements were given. I was not kicked off the jury. And that was reported in the media, and that was very upsetting. My mother suddenly passed away, and I had to leave to go take care of her services. And this has been an amazing process, an emotional one, and every single one of us has put our lives on hold to be here. And we have absolutely, even though I wasn't part of the process of deliberations, I am angry that there wasn't a finality really to this, and that all of these people sitting here in this room were not able to have that be their final decision. I wish I would have been here and been part of that process. Fortunately, I wasn't going to be able to be there for the entire deliberations. But
was there anything to the Mormon religion? Did anybody care about the Mormon religion, or
No.
Irrelevant to you?
Irrelevant.
Did that ever make you angry that the defense made such a big deal about T-Dog, about Travis's double life? Did it make you angry?
Yes.
Yes.
We felt like they put Travis on trial, focused on that rather than the reason why we were there.
When we reviewed the records for ourselves, at least I will say that I got a totally different picture of Travis than what was
Does anyone want to
portrayed.
say here if you're LDS or not?
I am LDS. I'm not active, but I am. And it didn't.
Did you at all?
Absolutely not. It didn't play a part. I came into this completely open-minded and was willing to give it my best shot to listen to absolutely everything, view everything, and it would not have played a part in this decision at all.
Was any weight given to the potential mental illness, the potential abuse, be it physical and or mental, that she allegedly sustained?
After reviewing all the records, we looked at text, the Gmail, and the journals, all to line them up, and we did not believe there was any physical abuse. The emotional abuse, we feel, was on both sides.
How did you feel about the defense's experts, Fonseca and Gessner? Did you find them credible?
Fonseca, no. We told throughout her testimony. Gaffner, in between Gaffner and DeMarte, we struggled with the two of them. We feel Jodi does have borderline personality disorder, but is not a mitigating factor at all.
Do you feel it did them any good having Gaffner come back?
I feel like
you heard them already.
For me, when I took more to him when he was first there, And when he came back is when I started to discredit him quite a bit, that I think they probably would have been better off had they not brought him back.
Did the slow pace of this trial really break on you? Was it how difficult? Was it endless nature? Of this?
Very difficult.
Very difficult. Tell me about that. This is supposed to be done by December 18th.
Yep. We felt, not knowing what was going on behind the scenes, there's a lot of downtime. We call it the white noise in the courtroom. Way too much downtime. It was just painstakingly slow. A lot of wasted time, we thought.
When you said earlier that you guys were stuck on couldn't come to a decision towards the end and you asked for guidance, I think you mentioned saying that you were inexperienced and asked for something that probably wasn't right. What was that?
What I said was, this is our first time in this kind of case, obviously. We weren't sure what I was allowed to put on the question sheet, but we raised two concerns and went as far as also to respectfully request consideration of an alternate based on our concerns. I didn't know if that was going to get me the boot, but I said, if so, take the learning. Don't ask again. But we wanted to make sure our concern was heard.
So you asked for an alternate to be switched with the one person holding out?
Yes, and we were very open and transparent about it, and we took a vote, and we provided some data with it. 11 out of 11 other jurors agreed with that.
Right, but the reason that we did wasn't because she just agreed with us. It was that she had brought up seeing that she'd seen parts of the movie, and she'd kind of followed it. So it kind of, in our minds, we kind of felt like, not that she came into a bias, but that because of what she'd seen, she'd seen this monster, from what she had seen, and when she got there, it's not what she saw. So we felt like there was a level of biasness from somebody that had kind of followed this, and we weren't comfortable deliberating with somebody that had that much information that we didn't have, because she was bringing it up in deliberations, which meant she was bringing it to our deliberation, and that bothered us.
You said she saw the Lifetime movie?
She said she seen bits and pieces of it.
When Jodi was on the stand, did any of you feel like she was directly trying to just manipulate you as opposed to state her case?
I did. I took down in my notes at one point, I believe in her testimony that she had mentioned when she was looking for a house with Daryl Brewer that they wanted to purchase a house in a good school district because of his son, when a short time before that they had mentioned that they only had Daryl Brewer's son during the summertime. So at that point I felt like, okay, well, she's lying to my face. I can't give any credit to any of her testimony.
Do any of you have any respect for the juror that did hold out because she did stick to what she believed?
I respect her steadfastness, and I told her that. But I just disagree, and for other concerns we raised.
Is she here in the room with us today?
No. I don't really think that anybody holds ill will towards her at all.
I don't hold ill will towards her, but I don't commend her on it because I think that it turned to more, in my opinion, I feel like it turned to more of a pride thing of standing her ground than what was actually believed. So, no.
Ask about when you asked to switch out her, did you specifically ask for alternate number 2? And if so, why?
No.
Oh, that's
no. That would certainly be
So
inappropriate. We requested consideration of an alternate for the reasons we listed.
Did you find that the jury instructions were clear, or were some of them pretty confusing to you?
I found them clear.
We did reread them many times.
Yeah. Was there one particular instruction that you had to keep going back over?
To try to get our point across, we went over several times does the mitigating factors outweigh the crime, the brutality of it. So that was one that we kept using because that was very important, that there was some things that we all did believe in the personality disorder and those things, but it didn't outweigh the crime and the brutality. So that was one thing that we really focused on and hoping to kind of use that. But
I think the instructions may have been a little lengthy during deliberations, that more than just one juror got hung up on different pieces of the instructions, and versus being able to remember all the instructions at the same time. So I felt that I personally had to put an effort in to keep us moving through the instructions and not get hung up on a particular one.
If any of you, do you have a message you would like to share with the Alexanders? And I know you won't have a chance to speak with them directly, but if they see any of this, is there anything you'd like to say?
I mean, her statement pretty much said, we're sorry.
We're sorry. We really feel like we made a huge effort into trying to be what we believe was deserved, and I could not say enough how sorry I am that wasn't enough.
Did you feel any pressure walking in the elevators every day and having the Alexander family every day? What was that vibe like?
I'd say I think we felt pressure all around about that.
Not just from the family, from the press.
From the media, from the cover goers. It's hard. We're constantly, I mean, you probably saw us all, we're walking with headsets in to try to avoid, so we can continue to be impartial and unbiased about everything, and it's pressure all day, every day, wherever you go, trying to avoid it, because it's everywhere.
We had to go to work every day, and after a while, people, even though we're not supposed to talk about it or say what trial you're on, people knew what it was, especially since the job I work in. They knew when I showed up on Tuesday and Wednesday, that same trial was also off. I mean, so it was hard. It was hard when people were like, so how not to react emotionally, or every time you walk in a room, you have to turn around, because I had to avoid people my friends and family, because they've tried, but they knew I emotionally was struggling for 5 months,
How do you guys feel about Judge Stevens?
I really liked her.
We like her.
I think she has a lot of, she came in and spoke to us, and I felt like she had a lot of heart, and I really did like her.
Was there anything said by the defense team that really just struck you as a very low blow, just inappropriate?
I felt like a lot of the things that they had said was a low blow. I felt like they portrayed him to be this awful person, which is not at all what we found when we really started digging into things. I felt like, to me, a lot of it was low blow.
They just hammered on the horn.
That brings me to my question. Many of us in this room followed both of the trials very closely, and it is a fact that you did not hear the evidence that first jury heard, all the details of the premeditation and everything that first jury found. So, and you, I think, needed to hear that to do your weighing test. It's not technically a weighing test in Arizona, but that's how you describe it. That's okay. And did you go back to the evidence in the first trial? Did you need to explore?
We dug through everything that went back with us.
We didn't have access to it. We only had access to the exhibits that were presented in this trial.
Yeah, we didn't have testimony.
Yes.
We did have, no.
We had exhibits.
The carts.
The carts, but we asked for a, what did we ask for? We asked for a,
list of exhibit numbers and descriptions.
No,
we got a stack of DVDs with just dates, nothing on them. No who was on there. I think the only thing was tagged was exhibits from the first trial.
We did get some exhibits. We did have some evidence, and we did, yes.
Ones that were admitted.
But nothing tagged.
More what was difficult was the bits and pieces of things. You have that just piece of a statement. You don't get a full context, and that was hard to go back and look and see just those pieces, not getting the full idea. And going back, I wanted to say that was what was hardest for us, is then going back and after seeing just bits and pieces through 5 months of their interaction, and then when we read all the journals, all the texts, and everything, and it's not at all like how it's portrayed.
What about the email from Chris and Sky Hughes? Did that affect you in your feelings towards Travis Alexander? Because
that letter, if you read it in its entirety, is actually a very loving letter. The pieces that we saw in the courtroom were the nastiest taken out of context.
That,
Did you see the whole letter?
that letter was originally what had me very early on. It wasn't till the very end that I really had changed my mind to the death penalty. And that letter was part of what really kind of swayed me that, you know, maybe there was an emotional abuse there. So they did have an effect on me. And I wish that we would have had more evidence from the Hughes to see really what that was kind of what we were hoping for, because that's all we had to go off of. And so it did have an effect, but in the end, it wasn't enough. So.
What is your message to Jodi Arias?
I don't dare.
Is there any other piece of evidence or testimony you wish you had, you wish you'd been able to hear or have access to?
I wish we had access to testimony and full testimony from, you know, the prior phases of the trial. That would have been very helpful. It was very frustrating lots of times when we would say, well, do we have this? And we couldn't find it. And it took a long time to sift through this stuff to see if we had it. There was always evidence on the table being sifted through as discussions were going on.
I know that too. One of the things was, since they did put Travis kind of on trial here, one of the things that was mentioned was that Dr. Geffner had read his journals, and I know that we were really hoping to get, you know, have his journal, and we didn't really understand why we didn't have his side, especially since he was so much on trial at this point. So that, to me, I would have liked to had to see what he kind of took from everything.
Not that you can speak for the holdout, but you get any impression that if you would have had things like Travis's journal, that if the Hugheses would have been put on, that if you'd have had more things, would have been swayed her at all?
I don't believe so, because she believed that the psychological makeup, that, you know, she was aware that she knew right from wrong, she knew that he suffered, she knew that, you know, she didn't have these blackouts. So I don't really honestly believe that there probably would have been much that could have been done.
To follow up on Steve's question, you said you don't want to say what you would say to Jodi Arias, but we all want to, I think, get a sense for what you think of Jodi Arias, to the extent, what is your opinion of Jodi Arias?
I actually think she's a psychopath.
I
actually think she's a psychopath. It has been waiting to happen, whether it came out with Travis or not, but I am the harshest of the group, I think. And when this trial's done, I have nothing to say to her because I don't want to give her any more, I don't want to give her any more attention, but I think she's a psychopath.
I would say in that part that, I don't really know. My personal feelings against her would be, obviously, I think she's an awful person. I think she's terrible. I think she's terrible for putting Travis down the way that she did. But if I had something to say to her, I would ask, now that the death penalty is off the chart for her, at least give that family the truth of what really happened. And I think it's wrong that she tries to tell us she's remorseful, yet she's still not being 100% honest. And so I just think that goes to show her character.
Genuine remorse is not full honesty.
Lack of.
Yeah, she has no remorse. She doesn't care that they don't. And writing that letter to the family, to me, was
horrible.
Was a low blow.
We didn't realize that was 18 pages.
Can the foreperson or anybody else who wants to talk about this just paint a little bit more of the picture of when you sent the note to the judge about switching off the one juror? Did she know that that letter was being sent, and what was her reaction? And just give us
who do you mean by she?
The juror that you were at.
Oh yeah, we were.
Give us a little bit of what was happening.
We were open and transparent. I read it aloud in the room. Everybody was present. So yeah, I told that juror that, if roles were reversed, I wouldn't want the poor person to submit a question like that behind my back.
But she wrote her own note to the judge.
We did.
And she was not.
Which we never saw, and we didn't force her to show.
Yeah. You could have known what the alternate juror was thinking if it was guilty. So you were willing to take that risk knowing the answer.
Yeah, because it was somebody that, like I said, my issue with it was that she had seen so much, like as far as the movie and the news. If we could have got somebody else in there, even if it was for life, first of all, they wouldn't have had that opinion already, and hopefully they would have given us something to back what they were saying. This was just a I feel. There was nothing that she could show us. So yes, it was definitely worth the risk.
So do you feel then ultimately that this juror came into the jury against the death penalty?
I think that she came in thinking that she was going to see a monster sitting there, and because that's what she had seen on the movie and that's what she had seen on the news, but when she walked in, she didn't. I can't say that I know what she was thinking when she came into it.
I saw some other heads bobbing yes to that. Does anybody else have any comments about whether she came in as a juror against the death penalty no matter what?
I don't think that she was aware that she was against it when she first came in. I think it was something that once you get closer to the end, she kind of realized, But I think
she was against it in principle, but she just couldn't do the death penalty to anyone.
Right.
We actually asked her that question. We asked her what it would actually take, what a person would have done to deserve capital punishment or to get capital punishment, and she couldn't answer that question. And for me, that was part of my frustration, was because she couldn't. I can't say whether she was unwilling or whether she couldn't, but she was not articulating her opinions. She never went undecided. She was life, and she wouldn't explain to us why. So it made it very difficult as a juror for me to try and persuade her and get her to see my side.
We learned during jury selection that she was emotionally, psychologically abused by her ex-husband. She called him the bully. She was projecting, she was projecting. That G-chat on May 26th, where Travis called Jodi all kinds of names, maybe justifiably so, we don't know the whole story. She may have identified and projected her ex-husband on that. Did she tell you about that?
No.
She didn't speak to it at all.
Specifically, but we did ask about.
Bottom line, do any of you think she violated the rules? Do you think she violated her oath? Do you think she violated the rules? Do you think she committed any kind of wrongdoing in her behavior in that deliberation?
Of course.
I think there may have been some exaggeration in the jury room. She was asked at one point whether or not she even believed in the